Just to be clear, I'm only recording this because I want your classmates who aren't here to be able to see it. You do not need to record if you choose option number 2. So this is a model of option 2. 2 to 3 page paper, write directly into your big Google Doc or copy paste into your big Google Doc. What do? Write a paper that analyzes the film. This is a formal professional paper where grammar and sentence structure matter. Make your paper double-spaced and in size 12 font. If you don't do that, you're going to write way more than you need to. Double spacing just means what you write amplifies. And I'm looking for 2 to 3 pages. The paper should be 4 to 5 paragraphs in length. How do you do this? First, first you're going to pick your film. And then you'll decide on 3 major elements of the film that you want to think about more deeply, using this list as a guide. Lighting, sound, camera angles, symbol, illusion, narrative. Mise-en-scène just means like the stuff in the scene. So for the film today, I'm going to talk about sound and camera angles. And I'm also going to talk about narrative and script. Narrative and script includes actors, the way that they perform the script. So those are the 3 I'm picking, and you can pick whichever 3 you like. Second, write an introduction where you explain what movie you selected and why you picked it. Then explain which 3 film techniques you're going to discuss. Just list them. Don't explain all of it yet. That's what the body paragraphs are for. Then build a paragraph around each one where you explain how it's working in the movie. And finally, use the conclusion paragraph to explain what you thought of the film as a result of all these techniques. So 4 to 5 paragraphs. Mostly it's going to be 5 paragraphs. Sorry. All right, so the rubric, it's 50 points for each, no matter what you pick. The 50 points stands for the final. Here, you're evaluated on first your intro. Did you include the 3 techniques you'll talk about? Did you include the other pieces I'm looking for as well? And then selection of techniques. Did you pick 3 specific things that you're going to look at? Or was it kind of a random list of whatever and felt like it was not organized? So I'm looking for that affirmative 3 things. And then analysis of techniques. This is me looking at your thinking. This is like where the stuff is. It's the biggest part of the paper. It's you evaluating, and what does this do in the film? And you'll hear me try to practice that today. And then lastly, your conclusion. Did you include your opinion of the film? And I also evaluate, because it's a paper on grammar. So is this error-free, especially in regards to the things we've really worked on in this class, capitalization and mid-sentence punctuation. Also sentence structure, which is kind of a part of mid-sentence punctuation. Okay, so say I pick this. The first thing I'm going to do is get organized. So I'm going to my master big Google Doc, pretending this is my big Google Doc, and I'm going to write my paper in this space. So I'll say week 18, January 25th, paper. Now, when I write a paper, and I've had to write many papers, I always organize myself in the document that I will then write the paper in. So I have a section on notes, and then I do outline. And as I read whatever I'm writing the paper about, I'll add my notes in my outline, and then when I want to write, I'll just come right here and I'll transform the notes in the outline into my paper itself. And that's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you that today. So we're going to use this film, People You May Know. Let's watch the first minute of the film, or really, let's listen to the first minute of the film, because you're not going to be able to see the images. So just listening, and then I'll evaluate it with you.
So, what's it been? 10 years? You look exactly the same.
11.
I remember back in the day, you wanted to be an architect.
You won't be able to see images, and that is okay. There are no images for the first part of the film. It's just what you hear them talking about. I'm going to take some notes. So I immediately notice it starts with only sound. The conversation between a man, and a woman. The conversation is about, seems like one person fulfilled their dream and one person didn't. And we'll get into that a little bit. Other notes, there's about to be the first image. You won't be able to see it, but I'll mention that the images are drone shots of London. Don't worry that you can't see it. All right, back to the movie and just listening to the conversation.
What do you do now?
I work in a shop in Hammersmith. It's boring, I know, it's just temporary.
It's okay. I mean, it's so hard to get a job after uni these days anyway. I mean,
I didn't go to university.
it's fair enough. I mean, it's not for everyone.
What do you do?
I'm a bike designer. Actually, I've just started my own company.
You always wanted to do that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
You're always brilliant.
It's all worked out okay so far. I like it. I was so happy and also massively surprised when you contacted me on Facebook. It's so good to see you. I've missed you.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there and start from the left. Okay, so what I'm hearing, and I've stopped the movie is not happening anymore, you heard with me, it was about a minute of them talking. Already, I have a lot to say because this conversation seems like it's going to be really intense. I think for me, a lot of that happened in the last line because he says, "It's so good to see you," and she doesn't say anything. And there's a lot of heavy sighs from him. This seems really emotional. And I'm trying to imagine the world in which I say to somebody, "It's really good to see you," and they say nothing. That would suggest they're angry with me. And that seems to be happening here. So I'm reading anger in the scene. The story suggests there is a lot of emotion behind this conversation. So what am I doing here? I've got these notes. I need to code them. So this is about sound. The first thing I say is what I hear about the conversation. There are these other sounds. This soft piano plays in the background. And then some other things. So camera angles. There's images of drones. Y'all can't see that, but it's if you chose this, you'd be able to. And then there's a narrative story element to this that's something I'm noticing, so I'm going to code that. Heavy sighs, that's a narrative and story element. That's like acting, heavy sighs, and anger. All right, so what do I see? I have three things. I've got my three things. So I'm going to say intro, discussing sound, narrative, story, and camera angles. And then I'll have paragraph 1. I'll start by talking about sound. Paragraph 2, I'll talk about, actually don't want to talk about narrative and story in the middle. I want to save that for the end because that's where I can really get into what happened. So I'll do camera angles. There's something I tell students, it's always save the best for last. You'll really have a better flow if you save your best moments for the end of the game. All right, I'm ready to write. So I'm going to model how I do that. I've got my intro notes. I'm going to start with my intro. In my opinion, once you write the intro, the rest of the paper writes itself. It's the hardest part to write. But I've given you a little bit of a clue as to how to do it. So I'll go back to the rubric and show you what I instructed you to do if you choose this. Write an introduction where you explain what movie you selected and why you picked it. And then explain which techniques you'll discuss. Just list them, don't say much about them. All right, so the movie People You May Know, directed by Louise Fielden, is about two young people who seem to be recounting a harrowing just means difficult, experience that happened 11 years before. The film is almost entirely a very intense conversation about something that haunts them both. I picked it because I think it reveals the gray, murky space between what is right and what is wrong. Okay, so I've done the first two things. I've introduced the movie, I've explained why I picked it. Now I need my thesis statement, which is always the last sentence of the intro, and what that is the place where I explain what I'm going to do. So, to achieve its success, the film relies on sound techniques that show how traumatizing this event was, camera angles that reveal the quality of the relationship, and a narrative that relies on authentic acting. Okay, so I've done my three things. And what I like to do in my intros is explain what I'm kind of already going to say a little. For myself, I do that so that when it's time to write the paper in the body paragraphs, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what I was going to say. Not just this is where I talk about sound, but I am going to talk about how sound techniques show how traumatizing this event was. So I am now going to model my first paragraph, just my first paragraph, on how would I do that? How would I show you what I think about the sound? The sound techniques, just start with the thing in the film, are creative and non-traditional. First, the conversation begins before the credits even roll, and the talking happens with no images on the screen. So I've made an observation, and now I have to analyze my observation. I have not analyzed anything yet. I've just said something I see. I have to make sense of that. Why is that a big deal? I think this shows how the conversation itself will be the major plot point of the story. And I'm going to build a compound sentence here. The words that are spoken will actually be more powerful than actions. Usually actions are louder than words. This is a movie where the words are going to be louder than actions. All right, my first observation. I want to make another observation. The non-diegetic sound, if you remember that day from class, in the background is the soft, eerie piano, which builds and crescendos towards the most intense parts of the conversation. So why does it do that? This is particularly interesting when the piano plays loudly after the man says, "It's so good to see you," and the woman says nothing. I want to do one last little piece of analysis. This reveals, what does it reveal of their relationship? Because they can't even agree on whether they want to be with each other. All right, I think that's enough. I have a couple of observations. I've tried to analyze them. I've covered sound. So I'm going to stop there and show you how I'd format that. And this is why you format it this way. Right now, this is like half a page. And that is hard for your teachers to read when it's all done in this way. This is why colleges ask for you to make it Times New Roman, lately sometimes Calibri, and then double space. And so now I have closer to a page already.